Welcome back. It's another year, and you guys have been asking so many great questions. And like I said, this year we're going to be doing a lot more questions, but we've got a couple really cool projects lined up. I'm just kind of getting those set up so that way we can do some more actual building videos as well. I guess without further ado, I'm going to just go straight into your questions that you keep on leaving in the comments, and please keep doing it because this is a lot of fun. First question. I was told that not changing the strings every 6 months would cause the neck to develop a ski slope. Is that true? No, the ski slope is kind of built into the guitar. That's called relief. That's actually a good thing. And I don't see what changing your strings every 6 months would do. It's the same tension. Actually, here's our mathematical formula that we work with. This is the mathematical formula for a string at rest. As soon as you pluck it, all these things. So this is your constant tension times the frequency times the diameter squared times the length squared. So this is at a string at rest. Now, if you pluck it, literally everything here changes because your frequency is going to go up and down. Your diameter, you're not getting extra string from somewhere else, so your diameter is going to get smaller. And your length, because you've got all these little extra bits on it, that's going to go longer. And your tension, that is going to be moving about as well as that string lengthens and shortens. And then the constant, which is the density of the material, that is also going to change because the diameter is changing, so it becomes slightly more dense and less dense. Although my father and I have significant arguments over these two changing, yes, it's a lot of fun around the dinner table. As long as these numbers equal about the same at rest, you're not going to be putting any more tension onto the guitar by changing the strings. That said, what you will get is a better sound because your finger oils and epithelios and stuff like that will work its way in between the windings of the string. So instead of your string vibrating very nicely like this is obviously the windings of it, those two areas in between will be filleted so the string is less flexible, thus the dull sound because you're not getting the high partials. Yes, change your strings every 6 months. It sounds like that person really wanted to sell you strings. And if you want to buy strings, check the links down below. But it's not going to do anything detrimental to your guitar. It's not going to pull your neck up. It doesn't matter what tension you have. If you have super high tension on there, it'll pull up maybe a tenth of a millimeter. Maybe. Probably not. Basically, don't worry about it. Change your strings every 6 months or less. In reality, the string manufacturers say that you should get about 2 to 3 weeks of life out of your strings. And if your strings last longer than that, you're in the black. They are definitely not going to be sounding their optimum. I kill strings in about 5 hours. So take that with a grain of salt. This depends on your body chemistry and how clean your hands are. And if you just had something greasy and didn't wash your hands, or you let a lot of people play your guitars like at a festival, and basically change your strings when they start to sound bad, or don't. It's up to you. I know some people who really like the dead strings, but it will not change the neck angle. Okay, sticking with neck angle. Apparently we're sticking our neck out. What is the relationship of the neck angle to the stiffness or tension of strings, particularly over the sound hole? Okay, first things first. There is no relationship to that. What we are talking about specifically is the designed and prescribed neck angle over the body. And actually, I've made this handy dandy high precision tool to measure the neck angle. Basically what this does is this bumps up against the bridge. This has clearance for whatever doming of the top. And then this rests right at the very edge of the body next to the fingerboard. And then we can see whether the fingerboard is raised up or lowered down off of this, because this is essentially a straight line. So I don't care what it does above the top. For me, my personal measurement is bridge, body, neck. When I build a guitar, I should say, I have a very specific height over the soundboard in mind. And if I'm going to be building a Ramirez style guitar or a flamenco guitar in the vein of like an old Faustino Conde or a Santos, I'm going to take my bridge and make that a little lower, and I want my height above my top to be around 7 to 8, maybe 9 millimeters. And I'm going to do that by lifting the neck a little bit and then planing down the fingerboard. If I want a classical or a normal action, I might just leave the neck where it is and raise up the saddle. And so this is all kind of the geometry that happens when I'm designing a guitar. So the relationship of the neck angle to over the sound hole, that's immaterial to the strings. That's all cooked into the design of the guitar. So if you have two guitars from the same maker and they're wildly different, either they had some different plans and designs based off of the height, or they're inconsistent, or they have a different workboard. So, for example, the Ramirez shop in the 60s and 70s, they had action heights that were 6, 7, 8. I've seen them as high as 9 millimeters above the 12th fret, but they weren't much more than 8 millimeters above the soundboard. Conversely, I'm building a guitar currently where I'm going to have about a 10 millimeter height above the soundboard and an action height of about 2.25 millimeters on the first string, and a little bit over 2.5 on the sixth. So very, very low action. That's all baked into the system. And I guess this will tie into the next question. What's my take on the Segovia action? I understand he had his action set more like 6 millimeters, so he dug in a lot. It did not fret out. Yes, he did. And one of the reasons why he stopped playing a Hauser, other than the fact that a poor technician dropped a Sennheiser microphone into the top of his beloved guitar, that Hauser could not meet the production demands that Segovia had. What he wanted was to be able to go into any music store in any city and grab a guitar and play a concert on it without buzzing. And because he wasn't the fastest player, he wasn't the most technical player, and I hear you guys writing in the comments, Segovia was the best there ever was. Yes, he was. But he was very musical and lyrical, and he was not this bombastic modern style of player. That allowed him to be able to play whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, however he wanted. But what he wanted was a lot of power, because he didn't want to use a microphone for aforementioned reasons prior. Also, the old guitars, the old concert halls and microphones were not great. The concert halls were amazing. The microphones were not, so they always sounded like they were a bit underwater, at least for the live systems. Nowadays, the microphones are fantastic. The audio systems are incredible. If you ever are in Chicago and get a chance to go to the Pritzker Pavilion, you'd be amazed at how good that sounds, because they have a natural decay built into the outdoor studio. So as you're watching, it doesn't feel like you're listening to a recording or a set of speakers. It's as if you are watching the orchestra right there. Nowadays, you don't have to dig in nearly as much. You can have a much lower action because of that. Segovia had that really high action because he didn't want to get any buzzing, and that's it. Both of the guitars that he got from my father, which I've got one of them in my showroom currently, both guitars that he had very normal actions, and we've got a letter from him stating how lovely they play and how it's like his mini Hauser. So it was his the second guitar that he got from my father was his favorite guitar that he owned in his entire career. More so than the Ramirez, more so than the Hauser. He just only had it for 6 months. So there we go. Does spruce top guitars get better with age when used in lattice or double top construction? How does cedar tops do as well with age, playing proper care? Okay, let's answer the first question second and the second question first. Cedar tops age exceptionally well. The reason they have the mystique of being played out is because early on they were kiln dried, and that drove away a lot of the lignins and the oils and basically the glue that held them together. They are subsequently now kiln dried but under vacuum, so you aren't losing all those volatile oils. So the very, very first round of cedar, yes, it kind of fell apart. The other part of it was marketing. You know, guitar dealers wanted to sell a couple guitars, and if you're selling a durable good that can kind of last generations, the best thing you can do is tell your clients, oh, it's gonna fall apart any minute, you need a new guitar. Yeah, as long as you don't get like a really, really old cedar top, which actually they're fine too, because we just worked on a guitar from 1856 with a cedar top. That was just fine. Cedar tops, perfectly fine. Oh, and I'm talking about one of these. Does spruce top guitars get better when used in lattice or double top construction? Spruce tops always get better. Now, I will say that with a double top construction, you're kind of skirting towards the edge of things because of the Nomex. Oh, all right. This is Nomex. This was developed for the aerospace community to make bulkheads stronger. Never once have I gone into an airplane and closed a bathroom door saying, that sounded good. This is Nomex. I don't know if you can see it or not. This is resin impregnated fiber, aka paper. You have a very limited lifespan. If any one of these glue surfaces lets go, your guitar is cooked. I know of many double top guitars that have had their tops replaced by the maker because this went bad. Do not use this. I don't like double tops. I don't think that they age well. They're great as a tool for a concert, but personally, as a listener, I find them boring. So do they age? Yes, they age. Do they age well in a lattice form as a solid top? Yes. I've heard some really, really great older lattice guitars. Actually, one of my favorite guitars that I owned for some time was Stephen Walter's personal guitar, which is a lattice with a spruce top, 645 scale, absolutely magnificent. I love that guitar. Steve loved it. The guy that I got it from loved it. And the person who has it now loves it. Spruce top, lattice. Sounds magnificent. Nomex, double top, I stay away from it because I make enough guitars and I do enough repairs that I have seen pretty much all the ways that it can fail. And I gotta tell you, I'm finding new ways every single time. Thanks for the question. Why is the nut not glued in? That's actually a really good question. The reason a nut on a guitar is not glued in, or at least on a classical guitar is not glued in, is because it's captured on the backside of most good guitars. And so for the steel strings, a lot of the reason why is because they're built in a factory setting and there is no capture or ledge on the back of the headstock to hold the nut into place. And when you have several hundred guitars going through at a time, a little bit of glue to keep that nut with the guitar is a really, really good idea. It makes a lot of sense. If you are in a classical setting and you've got the machinery set up well, you don't need to. I see a lot of factory guitars with the nut lightly glued in because of the same reason. You know, you set up the guitar, you want that nut to stay with it because you don't want your nuts just laying around all over the floor. That's a bad thing, because if you don't know where your nuts go, you're not going to be able to get that guitar set up well. Okay, so that is why we don't glue them in. Secondly, when you glue them in on a steel string guitar, as a luthier, you have to generally take a piece of wood and a little hammer, and I like to give it a little tap tap to pop it out, so that way it comes out controlled. I'm not whacking it. When you pull that off of a steel string guitar, not a big deal. When it's in a classical guitar, sometimes the captured slot is really, really, really deep, and then you have to resort to destructive means where you have to cut through the nut, collapse it in, and clean out the slot. It's a big job, so please don't glue your nuts in. Nobody likes a glued nut. I recently got my guitar set up by a luthier with the goal of lowering the action. The action is great now, but I'm experiencing buzz on an open A string and buzzing on the low E string and drop D, so your D string. I have normal tension strings, was wondering if I put high tensions on strings on the low E and A, if that would be a good way to get rid of the buzzing, or will you have to get a new nut saddle? If it plays great, chances are you may have either some high frets, which is entirely possible, or more likely your fingerboard doesn't have any relief in it, which is the curvature over the entire length of the fingerboard. It's very, very hard to show. Basically, if you hold down the first fret at the nut and hold down the 6th string at the 1st fret and the 19th fret, and then use your thumb to kind of tap in the middle. You should have about 2 business cards worth. Now, the other thing that may be happening is that when you put on the strings, you may be stretching them, which is causing some breakage on the internal windings, causing a falseness. So first thing you actually want to do is check your harmonics versus your fretted note at the 12th fret. Make sure that they are exactly the same. If you have a question in your mind, use a tuner and you'll see if with that little strobe thingy if it goes slightly sharp or slightly flat. So first of all, it might be a string issue. Second of all, you might just not have enough relief in your fingerboard, or you've got a high fret. Both kind of need the same cure. New nut and saddle, that's not really going to change anything as far as the overall buzziness. How to glue cocobolo with or other oily woods. Which glue do I use, naphtha or not? I don't like to glue with them, but I tend to use hide glue over anything else. I find that you can use super glue with the oilier woods. You just have to check the pH of it, which for me is taking super glue and putting it onto a piece outside of where I'm cutting and watching how quickly it sets up, because super glue is a pH based. I have had good luck in the past using, I'm blanking on the name of the glue now, but it's a potassium-based cyanoacrylic where it relies on the potassium in the wood. So you can put it onto the wood, you can go out to lunch, and it's perfectly fine. And until you squish it all together, then it sets off, and that's almost instantaneous. Naphtha is really good for removing surfaced oil, but because it's trying to seek its equilibrium, unless you are going to soak that piece of wood in naphtha until you've gotten all the oil out of it, it's just going to flush right back to the surface by the time you get your glue spread and by the time it's dry. So for me, it's going to be hide glue or cyanoacrylic. I just try to stay away from them because I find them to be problematic. Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun doing this. It feels good to get back to do the first new video of the year, because the last one was admittedly last year. Thank you for all who have subscribed. For your questions, like, comment, come on by. I've got special deals for you. You call me up and say, hey, I watched your videos and you want to buy a guitar. I've got some great deals for you. I truly appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next one. See ya.